was diagnosed with cervical cancer. I was told in my early 20s that I was at high risk for HPV. I was supposed to go to the doctor every 6 months for checkups, and unfortunately I did not do that here the last several years, which has been a little overwhelming with some things that had been going on in my life. I had skipped out on going to see my OBGYN for about 4 years. I had a regular routine pap smear done, and they told me that I would need to get a biopsy, but I even delayed that. Delayed that for almost a year, and when I finally went to go back to my OBGYN, they did what is called a leap, and unfortunately they did the biopsy and then the leap, which reflected that I did have cervical cancer. As a nurse, yes, I did know some about HPV, but I will tell you that even being a nurse, you have that thought process in your mind that the information I knew was that it was slow growing, and you assume, which is a dangerous thing to do, that it's not going to be me, and you hear other people say that, and you think, well, how did they think? How did they think that? Why would you take any risks with that? And life gets very busy, and I think in particular for women with children and working and doing things, we kind of put ourselves last. And even though I knew I was at high risk, I was lacking health insurance at the time, and put it off. So I knew the risks. I mean, I was aware of them. I can't sit here and say that I wasn't, but I didn't take the proper steps, which was getting proper screenings. I was not in the time period or young enough where the HPV vaccination was available to me, and had dealt with this for a long time. Every time they had gone to do a biopsy before, it had always come back negative. And so you assume. I have 2 teenage daughters. I have a 13-year-old and I have a 15-year-old. Both Ella and Davern have been vaccinated. All vaccinations, everything we do within the medical profession has some sort of, risk. Right. There's a risk involved. Right. But do the benefits outweigh the risk? And for me personally, when it came to my children and how bad this scared them, for mom to have to sit down and say, I have cancer, even from the day that I was diagnosed, I had to wait almost 2 weeks to know how bad this cancer was. It was a bad 2 weeks. I mean, you're contemplating life, and I was lucky in that it was just a hysterectomy. But again, I can tell you from reaching out to other women and what they've had to go through, you want your children to be vaccinated. The benefits of the HPV vaccination are going to outweigh the risks. And so both my children have been vaccinated. I think my biggest concerns going forward is, I think one of the hardest questions that I had to ask Dr. Scalisi was, in an appointment I realized that I still have HPV. I think I thought for just a moment, they took out my cervix, they took out my uterus, they took all those things out. And yes, that is where HPV, from what I understand, that's the host that it most likes. But that puts you still at risk for a lot of other cancers. I'd like to sit and tell you that once you've been diagnosed with cancer and they give you that green light, you're okay. Yeah. That fear goes away. But I can tell you honestly that I live with that fear still sitting here with you today. Any little thing that comes up, I still think, do I have cancer? Is this, oh gosh, this is bothering me today. Fatigue was probably one of the biggest things looking back that probably I noticed. I look back thinking, working 12-hour shifts as a nurse, that I was struggling. I mean, really struggling, and I don't now. And so now anytime something small like that comes up, or that I probably don't need to be too concerned about, it seems to play out in my mind in ways that I wish that it wouldn't. The HPV vaccination, again, I go benefits outweigh the risks. We do that with all vaccinations for children. Again, we take a risk in anything that we do within medicine, whether it's a blood pressure medicine, whatever it may be. The HPV vaccination is going to give your child the benefit of being protected and perhaps avoiding everything that we've just discussed today, that fear that I still live with today, and having to go through treatments that affect you the rest of your life. Unfortunately, most people at some point in time in their life have HPV. This is not uncommon. The stigma has to be taken off that somehow this is uncommon. It's not uncommon. This is very, very common. Most people, I think it's 80% of the population at some point in time is going to have HPV. The question is, which strands do you have? Do you want to leave your child unprotected? Do the benefits outweigh the risk? And I encourage every parent to look up every bit of information that you can and speak with your doctor about the benefits and the risks and how this can best help your child to prevent these things from happening, whether it's now or in the future. I encourage every parent to get their child vaccinated. It is important, and I hope that their child never has to sit like we are today, that I'm doing, and that they can protect their children from those risks. It's important.